If the ancient stories of giants are rooted in ancestral memory, it would be reasonable to expect giant remains to have been found. Giant human-like remains have indeed been found, and in particular in the Americas. In the USA, between 1819 and 1859, giant remains were unearthed in Missouri, Ohio, West Virginia, Iowa, California, and Pennsylvania. These finds were reported in the newspapers and for a time were curated by the Smithsonian Institute before being repatriated. But what exactly were they? The height of 9 to 13 to 15 feet is anomalous, and details like 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, plus double rows of teeth or molar-type teeth, suggest something other than Homo sapiens. And it's intriguing that these details do repeat in contemporary reports and contemporary finds. The red hair, the height, the number of fingers, the kinds of teeth, these details repeat in biblical descriptions, in Josephus 2,000 years ago, and out of Kandahar in our own period. What do these correlations mean? Where do these giant hominids fit into the picture? What would be deeply informative would be a DNA analysis of the Allatoona finds, or any of the putative 19th century finds, or any artifacts from the Kandahar encounter. Would the results be human, or another kind of hominid, or a hybrid of human and something else? The hybrid claim is part of the Minoan story, Norse story, Celtic, Vedic, Greek, and biblical narratives, with the earliest written narrative of human hybridization existing in the Sumerian Epic of Gilgamesh. In 2003, an extraordinary opportunity presented itself to test the historicity of the Sumerian claims of hybridization and giants. Now, this opportunity arose because immediately prior to the Allied incursion into Iraq in 2003, Jorg Fassbinder had identified the probable site of Gilgamesh's tomb. Now, to be clear, in the Sumerian story, Gilgamesh was a hybrid, part human, part sky people, or Anunnaki. If we could find his tomb, we could begin to test that story. Gilgamesh was a giant. We could observe how large was the sarcophagus, and if there was any biological material there that could be DNA tested, let's do that. What would we find? Would it be purely human, or would it be human hybrid? Because there you can either verify or falsify the ancient story. If you find that it's merely human, now we know how to read those Sumerian stories. It's fable, it's fiction. If Gilgamesh was something else, we have to go back to the Sumerian stories and look again and ask what real memory is being carried by these narratives. Prior to the incursion into Iraq, Jorg Fassbinder had gone onto the BBC, had talked about the soil magnetization technology they'd used. 99% certainty, this is the tomb of the historic Gilgamesh. We can go in and investigate that whole story. And so within days of the Allies going into Iraq, there were archaeological units at that site identified by Jorg Fassbinder to do archaeological retrievals, and then everything went silent. Now, why was that? We heard nothing more from Jorg Fassbinder until a few years later, when he was talking to a French magazine, and he said, "Oh, we decided not to investigate further. We thought it was best to keep the site safe and bury it to prevent looting." Now, I would just ask, how likely is that? It was so important that within days of going into Iraq, that site had been secured. Military teams were there to safeguard the archaeological extraction. Do you really think that within a couple of days they just changed their mind and decided not to pursue the matter? What I'd suggest is this, that yes, they went to the site. Yes, they made archaeological retrievals, but there was no way
they were going to do testing like that in public, in case something very controversial emerged. If they did testing and there was nothing to see, they could publish that. If they did testing and there was something controversial, better not publish that. So I would suggest the logic is they discovered something about Gilgamesh that was not publishable. I would suggest that what they found was something other than pure human remains, that it did confirm the Sumerian story of Gilgamesh being something other than human. Human plus a bit of something else. And as soon as you have that, you have to listen to other giant narratives more seriously, and you have to go back to the Sumerian stories and ask what other factual information is here, because the Sumerian stories and the stories of their daughter cultures of Babylonia, Arcadia, and Assyria are fantastical to the 21st century mind. If we take those ancient narratives more seriously, the Sumerian story puts us in a populated universe. It says we have more relatives in the cosmos than we'd ever imagined. It says that we did not evolve by chance, that we are an engineered species. And it suggests that we are capable of far more than we've yet achieved. It explains why we are ill-adapted to Earth in many ways. The only reason we're the alpha species is because we can build a shelter, make a weapon, light a fire. Where did that high intelligence come from? The Sumerian narratives have an explanation, and it has to do with hybridization. And so I think the controversy around giants is not simply to say we've had more company on planet Earth, but we've had more company in the cosmos. If we had tested Gilgamesh and found that to be authentic, the real controversy is not, oh, there were more hominids than we thought, oh, they've been around for longer. The real controversy is, who are we? Where did we come from? What is the true story of the origins of humanity? And what does that have to say about our potential as a species?